What you're looking at here, that's a stottie. It's a bread roll from the northeast of England, which originated during the Industrial Revolution. Back in those days, workers would typically take 1 day a week, which they would dedicate entirely to baking, and they would bake the bread for the coming week. At the end of this baking session, after all the bread and all the other stuff was made, they'd take whatever leftover dough was there, roll it out into a big disc and put a hole in the middle. And they'd cook that at the bottom of the oven on low temperature with the leftover heat. And that's the reason why people in Leeds refer to this very same bread roll as oven bottom bread. Go to some other places in the UK and I'm sure they'll have their own names for it as well. And when it comes to more generic bread, like this, it gets even more contentious. There's bread bun, bread roll, Lancaster cake, tea cake. It's a massive list, and every city seems to have their own variant.
Hello, I'm Adam. I'm a home cook on a journey to learn more about food and cooking, from history and the environmental impact to new recipes and ways to cook. And today, I want to talk about bread rolls.
Being from Newcastle, I obviously think that bread bun is 100% right, but everyone else seems to think they're 100% right in whatever terminology they use as well. But actually, the debate around bread names is pretty much exclusive to the north of England. In the south of the UK, they pretty much refer to all bread rolls as bread rolls. This kind of makes sense when you think about it geographically. The northern cities are a lot more spaced out compared to the sprawling south, where everything's kind of eaten up by the urban sprawl. In the north, it's all separated by countryside, and so historically in the days before the internet and, travel and stuff like that, the terminology was more regionalized and harder to spread. That's probably why accents and slang can vary from cities as close as 20 miles to each other. Go from my home city of Newcastle to Sunderland, and the accent is mildly different. Go a little bit further to the likes of Leeds or somewhere like that, and the accent becomes radically different. The interesting thing though is even though these geographical boundaries are no longer a factor with the internet and transport innovations and so on, we still have these different names across the cities. We still refer to bread rolls as bread buns in Newcastle. Some people in Yorkshire refer to them as tea cakes or barm cakes or baps. Why is this still the case if the geographical constraints are no longer a factor? But not only that, people still passionately believe that their naming conventions are the quote-unquote right ones. They'll argue passionately that whatever terminology they're using is the correct terminology. And that includes me as well, to be honest. When I was studying at university, I had some housemates from Wakefield, and literally we'd argue every week about the naming of bread. I'd say bread bun, they'd say bread roll, I guess. I can't really remember the specifics, to be honest, but I remember that I was very, very passionate about the argument. And never once did I actually consider that I could be wrong, or that, moreover, the argument could be completely redundant. But why? Why didn't I think I was wrong? I've been trying to think objectively recently about why I thought I was so right. And to be honest, I have no answer. Because there is no right answer, right? It's completely subjective. The names are completely arbitrary. And like I said, I still somehow felt passionate that I was right. But truth be told, the reason that I think I'm right, the reason my old housemates from Wakefield think that they were right, and the reason that anyone thinks they're right about any sort of regionalized terminology, it's purely because it's all they've been raised to know, right? We're just products of our environment at the end of the day. It's the same reason I speak with a Newcastle accent, it's the same reason I loathe Americanisms, and it's the same reason that I support a team as hopeless as Newcastle United. If I'd been born in, say, the US, I'd probably loathe British English instead, and probably wouldn't use the term loathe either. And maybe I'd not care about football at all. And I'd think I was just as right. So then you might be wondering, as technology makes our culture more homogenous and globalized, will these terms like bomb cake or bap or bread bun, will they eventually disappear? Personally, I don't think so. As Lou Down notes in her book Good Services, as humans, we continue to do things that don't make sense or aren't as efficient, and we do that just because it's the standard. It's what we've grown up to understand and know. It's our impression of the world. It's why we use expressions that make no practical sense. Hang up the phone. Have you ever hung up a phone? Has anyone alive ever hung up a phone? Roll down the window. How many cars have still got windows that you can actually roll down? And upper and lowercase for alphabets. That was based on the printing press, and how many books or letters are printed that way now, right? These expressions made sense when they were coined, but now they don't make any sense at all, but we've just grown up to know them, and we use them because, well, why not? There's no reason not to. Even if we started using terms more apt to the time and place that we're living in now, it wouldn't improve our lives in any way to kind of antiquate these terms and use these other terms instead, right? With these expressions and with the numerous names for bread rolls, it's all pretty harmless, to be honest. No one dies, right? But this is the flip side. Sometimes that same human nature that makes us cling to the tradition of using antiquated terminology or regionalized terms for bread rolls can bring harm. It's why many people, for instance, in this day and age, grow up with these outdated racist or homophobic ideals. They've just inherited that from the environment in which they grew up in. An environment which hasn't really moved with the times and accepted people for who they are. We need to be mindful of the biases that are dictated by the environment that we grew up in. Instinctively, we'll argue the toss about any old point if it goes against the world that we grew up in, the one that we were raised to understand. But instead of jumping the gun, just take a moment and consider whether those beliefs are really objectively true.
Thank you so much for watching. I'm constantly cooking, experimenting and researching to learn more about food and cooking. And I share what I've learned every week. If you want to learn more about the food that you cook and better ways to cook it, please consider subscribing to the channel. See you in the next video.